Episode 37 with Deanna Schneider on the 9 Point Start the Dream podcast.
Welcome to 9 Point Started with a Dream podcast. Our goal is to showcase the stories of athletes and the community that supports them by being authentic about their journey. Here's your host, Jacolby Gilliam.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This episode we have Deanna Schneider. She was one of the first people I got contact with when I first started 9 Points. It's kind of cool to see how her journey has evolved throughout this process as well. We go through how she kind of got involved in sports and what she's doing today with the winning element in her new book. So I hope you enjoy and let's get to it. Deanna, the question I ask everyone comes on is, when you're younger as an athlete, what was one of your bigger dreams or goals you want to achieve?
You know, I really wanted to be the first woman to play in the NBA. That was my earliest and biggest dream as an athlete. I started playing basketball when I was 5 years old. And at that time, the WNBA didn't even exist. That wasn't a thing. So for me, when I was growing up and playing basketball as this 5, 6, 7-year-old, that was the thing that I looked up to. That was the thing that was the biggest goal that I could achieve, was to be the first woman to play in the NBA. And then, you know, a couple of years later, there was the first woman who played in the NBA. And there was, I believe, and don't quote me, somebody fact check me on this, but there was one woman who played, and I'm not sure how that went down or how long that lasted, but eventually they created the WNBA. And then that was kind of like the next goal. So that's probably my biggest goal.
So what about that? So what about being the first? Why basketball over all sports?
Well, I grew up playing basketball, and, you know, my family has always been basketball fans. I grew up in Los Angeles, or just outside of LA. So LA Lakers have always been my team. And, you know, when you grow up in a family where, you know, they're watching basketball or they're fans of basketball. I also had an uncle who really enjoyed playing basketball as well. So when I was growing up, that was a really connective experience for me, in a way that I was able to connect and share time with people who I cared about. And I've always loved exploring all different sports. Basketball was my first sport. I dipped into baseball for a while, got a couple of black eyes, didn't work out too well, didn't want to play softball, and was kind of over baseball. You know, I dipped into soccer for a little while, didn't like running up and down that field. And honestly, I just fell head over heels for basketball. So, you know, at the time of growing up and being a fan of the Lakers, and having a family who really enjoyed watching basketball. And, you know, as kids, we're always trying to like win and win the attention and the affection of our family. So I'm sure, oh my God, I'm sure that had something to do with me also falling in love with basketball at that time.
I love it. So once you realized that dream wasn't going to be the one, how did you pivot, or what made you say, okay, what's next to be trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that, so I started playing basketball when I was younger, and, you know, there was other sports and adventures along the way. I really enjoyed going to the beach during the summers and boogie boarding, and not just like the boogie boarding where you ride the foam in and you ride it and you get off and you do it again, but the kind where you've got fins on, you're out in the middle of the ocean, you're dropping into these waves. So I've always been interested in different sports. For me, basketball was the sport that I enjoyed playing, that I had more time to play, and I had more accessibility. The beach was 45 minutes away, so it was something that I could just do all the time. Same thing for the other sports. And then I was playing basketball middle school and in high school. And when I got into high school, I really wanted to be a double sport athlete. Like, I thought that was the cool thing to do, was to play two sports. So I added volleyball. And at that time when I was playing basketball, I was burnt out. I had coaches that were yellers. I was a freshman on the varsity team. I was one of the only white girls on a predominantly black girl team. You know, we had upperclassmen. I mean, it wasn't a fun, connective experience playing basketball and jumping from middle school to high school, right? Like, it's all of these different factors. It's all of this different stress. It's all of the different things to come together. So, and it's the level of training as well. We were a very competitive team. So I was playing basketball kind of struggling with it. Started to play volleyball. And if you've ever been on a basketball team or a volleyball team, you know that is they are very different team atmospheres, and it's a different game. It's a very different team game. You know, when you're playing volleyball, you're celebrating every single point, whether you win or lost the point. Every point in volleyball ends in an error, but everybody's celebrating. Everybody on that court is celebrating because volleyball is a game of momentum. And I love to win and I love to celebrate. So volleyball was super duper fun. You know, I was learning a new sport. The atmosphere was very different. You know, the athletes who play volleyball, it's just a different team atmosphere. For basketball, same thing. So I would bounce between these two different sports. And as I was bouncing between them, I started to realize I hated basketball. I was done. I was absolutely done with it. And when I was growing up, you know, my parents, they loved basketball. And I got to this point where it was no longer the dream anymore for me. And I was realizing that my efforts and the time that I was spending, it became really unproductive. And frankly, it just wasn't healthy for my mental health or for the stress that I was feeling. And somebody told me when I was a sophomore and I was playing volleyball for the first time in club volleyball, they told me, if you work hard enough, you could get a scholarship. And that was the only thing that I needed to completely drop basketball and jump fully into volleyball. So although it was difficult to tell my mom and dad that it just wasn't serving me anymore and that this was the right decision for me, which my parents are incredibly supportive. So that conversation was very easy for the most part. And they were fully supportive. They're like, okay, well, I guess we could learn to love volleyball. It'll be fine. You know, so they went through their withdrawal but they completely fell in love with volleyball. So the new dream was playing volleyball in college and getting a Division I scholarship. That was what I set my sights on. So my sophomore year, junior year, and senior year were really pushing towards this dream and this goal of getting into a good school and playing the sport that I loved. And because I was fairly new to it, I didn't have this burnout mentality. I hadn't been playing it for so long. You know, and there was things that I was still learning and that I realized that in my development for volleyball, I realized that I didn't even learn until I was like a junior playing Division I volleyball. And they're like, how did you not know that about this sport? I don't know. Nobody ever taught me because I started playing when I was 16. And apparently everybody learned that rule except for me because it didn't apply to me.
You're making your own rules.
Yeah, I just didn't know. There was just like the finer points or like some strategic things that I just didn't pick up on and I didn't know because for volleyball, my position as a middle blocker was incredibly specific. Like you have two main jobs and half the time you don't even know what's going on behind you because you have two jobs. Everything that goes on around you, like you have two jobs. You need to close a block and you need to be up to either swing or be a decoy. Those are the two things that you do as a middle. Everything else around you, irrelevant. You have no control. I don't know where anybody's standing. I just know there are people playing defense behind me and my job is to be here. And I didn't see any of it. So there was a lot of things that I just didn't learn it.
So going back to, you deciding to switch sports and you're like, okay, my parents may not like this, for anyone that's maybe like dealing with that, as an athlete, your parents have their own dream for you, but you're like, I'm really starting to love gymnastics. I'm starting to really love football over baseball, How would you say approach the conversation?
So I would say first and foremost to really do some reflecting on why you might feel the way that you do and really check in, do that first and foremost, that check in with yourself and say, do I not like this other sport because I'm not good at it? Do I not like this other sport because I don't like the way I'm being treated by coaches and other people? Do I not like this sport because I don't want to rise to the challenge? Do I not like this other sport because X, Y, and Z? So I would say, first and foremost, question, and I don't say question in a judgmental way, but really reflect on why it is that you're being pulled towards another sport. And then once you kind of have that deep knowing of the right thing to do, because I think it's really important for us to reflect on why we might be making the choices that we want to make. And then as soon as we have that gut feeling that like, no, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what sets my soul on fire. Once we kind of know what that is, and you have a deep knowing, then opening up the lines of communication and really getting clear on that, I think like that's the next part, right? So I think the piece of advice is communicating from a place in your heart, right? Coming through with a lot of compassion and vulnerability and explaining, because the people around you that you're talking to, whether it's your teammates, because I had that, the girls that I played with for basketball, I played with them for years, and some of them were my best friends. And then I had family members who really had a vested interest in me continuing to play basketball. But everybody's always going to have an outside view on what's best for you, what you should or shouldn't do. And especially as a youth athlete, everybody's going to think that they know best for you. But as you're developing as a young woman or a young man, as you're starting to get to know yourself, as you're really getting clear on the vision that you have for your future, it's important to honor that and also learn how to communicate that and know that other people are going to tell you a bunch of things that have everything to do with them and very little to do with you. We all have our different lenses that we look through, from our life experiences to our history, to the way that we were raised, to our culture, to religion, all of those different things. We have these lenses. So I think it's important that as we start to communicate our truth to other people, it's important to know that their lens might not always match yours, and that's okay, but to deeply honor your truth and what you want to do. And almost, for parents, sometimes it's difficult, right? Because they don't have a lot of control of their kids. Like they're, and I tell this to youth athletes all the time, like, as 16, 17, 18-year-olds, you guys are growing up. You guys are almost out of the nest. Yes, they provide for you. Yes, all those things. But for the most part, they don't have a lot of control. So every little thing that they're losing all of those things. So it's important to know that too. And more than anything, to communicate with love and truth that this is what I want to do. And you know what? You might not think it's best for me, but I know that it is, and I'm willing to step into that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Spitting some fire right there.
Whoo! Trying some days.
So now you're in college, right? I remember you have an article for the site about how you had that first tryout, and how it was like, okay, this is go time. So how did you have to shift your mindset from high school to now playing Division I college?
Nice. So to clarify the test, right? So I got recruited to play Division I volleyball. And in that, I got a scholarship, was recruited, and knew that I was going to be coming in with a group of 5 freshmen. So 4 other women coming in to compete for spots, right? And we definitely had our spots. So we were on the team. But one of the things that we had to do as a team, and one of the requirements for being able to start preseason, was this test. And it was a sprint test. And I'll try to have to remember the numbers, but we had a certain number of 100-yard sprints that we had to do under a certain amount of time. And if anybody on the team failed any one of those sprints, we would have to do it again until we passed. If we couldn't do it for 3 days, if it took us 3 days and we couldn't do it, then we would be cut and you're done. So for me, when I heard that I had this test that I was gonna do, and I'm a preparation kind of a person,
I can
and
tell.
I'm a preparation kind of person, and I don't like being stressed. I like knowing that I'm going to succeed. So the first time that I heard about this test, it was the summer before I went to play volleyball, right? So it's probably in May that I found out about this test, and I have to run it in June, July, August. In August, I have to run it in August. So I've got months. I've got June, July, August. Shoot, that's only 3 months. So I had 3 months. I had 3 months to train my butt off to make this work. So I remember as soon as I got it, I was like, all right, well, I got to see where I'm starting from. So I remember cowering to the line and running. And I probably got a couple of sprints in, and it was very clear that I was going to have to work very hard, that these sprints were going to be very difficult. So throughout that summer, I was not going to get sent home. I'm not moving to Texas. I'm not bringing shame on my family. I'm not going home because I'm going to play Division I volleyball. So there was this mindset throughout the training that you can do this. You're doing, and I'd always be like, this is for UTPA. This is for the school. This is for me. This is for my team. You know, I'm doing extra reps because it's for the team. So there was this mindset that I had to earn it. I had to earn it every single day. And that's how I showed up. And I did a couple of tests throughout to see where I was, and I was getting better and better, but I still wasn't able to do the full test. And I remember right before I left to go to South Texas and start to run the test, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks before I actually left, I came up a couple of sprints short, and it was like a couple of seconds. And I completely had like a breakdown moment. I went home, tail between my legs, and I was probably crying.
Hey, tears happen, you know, it's all
Hey,
good.
blood, sweat, tears. That's how
Yeah.
we make it happen. Then I went home and I was stressed out, and I was talking to my mom, and she was saying, Deanna, you've been training all summer. You're ready. And although you didn't make it today, you're going to make it in another day, and you still have time, and you're going to be okay. Just keep training. Just keep training. Tomorrow's another day. Just keep training. So I just kept training. So I went back and I hit it, and I was running hills, and I was running sprints, and I was doing everything I could. And then the day of came. And by that time, I felt ready because I knew that I did everything I possibly could to succeed. And that I knew that no matter what, win, lose, draw, that I had given it everything that I had. So sprint after sprint after sprint, it was fun. At that point, it was fun. And it might be because the sprint length was slightly less. Like I looked at it and it was slightly less than 100 yards, and I was not mad about it at all. And it might have been because of that. I was like, oh man, I've been overtraining. I got
I
this.
got this.
I
It's all
got
mental.
this
It's
now.
all in your head. You're like, we're good.
Yeah, and just sprint after sprint, and everybody was making it, right? And I wasn't even coming in last. Like I was doing well. I wasn't first either. I'm 6'1", okay? I'm a big girl. So sprint after sprint, it just, I was coming in. And by the end of it, we got, I'd run all the sprints. Everybody made it. There was one girl who didn't, and she actually had to run it a couple more times. But everybody except for that one girl made it. That girl, right? She ended up making a pivot and going somewhere else anyway. So it wasn't right for her anyway.
Yeah.
But it was this moment for me that if I worked hard and if I put everything that I had into something, that I could succeed at anything, and that all it took was time and effort, and that I would be successful. And I earned it. I earned it every single day. I earned it the day that I took the test. And then I knew for the rest of my collegiate career that I was going to have to earn it every day, that this wasn't just, all right, you earned it. Great job. You did your sprints. Here's your scholarship. It was, no, I have to work for this every single day. And I'm going to continue to work for it every single day. And I'm going to do my best every single day. So that was, it was a huge confidence booster for me. And it helped me rely on myself. So whenever I was going through, and whenever I do go through things that are difficult, whether they're physical or mental challenges, that I can always rely on, if you work hard enough, you will succeed. If you work hard enough, you will succeed.
I love that. I think that's such a key phrase, every day I have to earn it. Because
nothing's given. Nothing ever. Ever.
And I think sometimes I know I was that way as a youth athlete. I was like, I'm guaranteed to be on the team. I'm guaranteed to, to start. I got the college and I was the walk on, and I was like, oh, I do got to earn it. So I was like, okay, that was a different game. So for you, once you kind of develop this mindset, is I got to earn this. How did the rest of your career go as a college athlete?
So as a college athlete, so it's actually really interesting, right? So for most athletes who play in high school or play in club, or they play at the youth level, right? So subcollegiate level, most of us are on the best team or one of the best teams, right? Because we got recruited to play in college, whether that's D1, D2, D3, whatever. But you were probably a good enough player on a good enough team. So if you come from a history of winning, right? And then you get thrown into whatever collegiate program that you're a part of, whether that's D1, D2, D3, NAIA, everything else, right? You can be humbled to know that unless you're top 100, right? Unless you're BYU or Nebraska or like whatever the big schools are, Miami, all the schools, UCLA, USC, all those. But you're coming into college and you're finding out, oh no, I'm not the best. I'm personally not the best on my team anymore. I'm around a group of athletes and many teams of athletes who are the best in their area at what they do. So it's very humbling. It's very humbling to come onto a team and come from a winning culture and have losing seasons for 4 years. And that was my story. I had 4 losing seasons, and losing seasons mean you win less than half, which means you lose more. So for me, I had 4 losing seasons, but winning and losing isn't everything. And I know a lot of people who are listening are like, what do you mean? Winning is everything. It's not. It's the progress, it's the development. Everybody likes to win, but it's about, is it a win as a team, or is it I had great stats, or our team had great stats, or our team improved. So being on I say this in quotes for people who are listening, a losing team doesn't necessarily mean you are a loser or that you're not capable of winning. It just means win means something different. And it changed my perspective on everything, because I was highly competitive, and it changed the focus. It wasn't about winning anymore. Although, hell yes, I want to win every game. Everything I do, I want to win. But it really changed my my focus to more of a progress mindset and less of an outcome of, well, we want to win a championship. That's the goal. That's what we're working to. For me, it was more, how do we develop ourselves? How do I, and for me, I was always fighting off injuries. So it was, how can I stay the healthiest during season and make it through without any injuries? How can I play my best game? Again, my position is very skill specific. So I can play the best game that I can play, but I really can't, I can't affect the win or the loss. I mean, I can to a degree, but there's so many different variables, the other team, my teammates, everything around me. So having those losing seasons taught me a lot about how to look at athlete development, how to look at locus of control, like what can you control, what can't you control, what should I focus my time and energy on. So that taught me a lot.
So I know it's easier when you're losing to be like, I'm gonna jump ship, right? It's easier to be like, I'm gonna transfer into a better team, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
What helped you, I guess, stay the course?
Well, we came in, as a freshman, we came in with 5 total. So we had 5 freshmen. My freshman year, we lost 1. My sophomore year, we lost another. They jumped ship. or not even jump ship, but their life plans changed, whatever that means, right? And then, so the 3 that remained, we always had a commitment to the team, to ourselves, and to what we were doing. I was incredibly happy with my life outside of volleyball. I had great friends. I had a great relationship. I had a great support system. I loved where I was at. It was a perfect match for me. I was in South Texas. So number 1, the weather was great. Number 2, the food was awesome. The business program that I was in, I was really enjoying the atmosphere that I was in and the classmates that I had. So, in terms of jumping ship, there was so much more that went into it other than just the athletic perspective. And also it's like the hope of getting better every year, right? So it's like year 1 to year 2, okay, we're going to do better. And we did do better. And then junior year, we got an entire new coaching staff, which was really inspiring because we brought in really talented, super young coaches who brought a lot of life into the program and reignited and I say our as in like the 3 people who I was really closest to, but also the people who were slightly younger too, reignited our passion for the sport and for what we were doing. So junior year was kind of a new beginning for us. So there was never a time for me personally where I thought, I really want to go to someplace else where I can win more. For me, it was more about the totality of the experience than just volleyball and the record.
Love that. Because it's easy to be like, I want to win, and just, cause especially nowadays, it's like we think so much about self.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. Now we're finishing up college. How did you decide what's next for Deanna?
Oh man, that was a confusing time, which I'm pretty sure it's a very confusing time for everybody. So when I was graduating, so I got my undergrad in marketing, and at that time, it was 2008, 2009, which was when the market crashed, which is when there were very little jobs out there. With, for people who are younger, like things were really crazy for a while. Like there was a collapse going on. And as an athlete with no work experience other than playing elite volleyball, going out into the professional atmosphere just didn't seem like an option. I was really drawn to up-leveling my education. I knew I wanted to get a master's. I wanted to get my MBA at some point. And as the collapse was happening, it was like, I think now is a great time to double down on my master's degree. And this other opportunity presented itself where I was able to be the graduate assistant of the volleyball team. So it was a scholarship to do my master's in business. And at that time, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my marketing degree. It's not like I had this clear path or this clear vision of what I wanted to do. I had just finished 4 years of volleyball. I had done an externship with NASCAR which was a really cool experience. And we won the grand prize for that. And I also, I actually finished in like a semester. I had another semester to complete because I had a minor. So for me, there was a lot of pressure going on. So finding a job was not something I really wanted to do. And just the stars aligned for me to really go down this path of getting an MBA and also being the graduate assistant. And the graduate assistant position opened my eyes to what I did not want to do for the rest of my life, which was coach. It was not something that I wanted to do. It was great to be in the team environment. It was great to work with the athletes, and I really enjoyed certain parts of that position, but I also really hated everything else about it. And it wasn't something that I wanted to do. So actually in my second year, I switched to the business department as a teaching assistant. So I still had a scholarship to get my MBA, and I finished my MBA. And even at that time, when I finished my MBA, I didn't even know what I wanted to do then. Like I knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit. And at one time, I think at the end of my MBA, I think I owned a franchise in an energy company. So I was working on the entrepreneurial side. You know, I want to be a CEO, but you know, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'd love to be an executive assistant or, you know, something like that, so I could really learn. So I started looking for executive assistant positions. And then I was doing multi-level marketing stuff too. So like that entrepreneurial spirit was really stoked. And I was around really, really talented people. And that experience helped me really develop my professional development and be able to be articulate and have fun and network with other people. So I learned a lot of really cool soft skills during that time. And then after I started realizing, oh shoot, I don't necessarily want to be in that particular area. I'd been there for 9 years by that time because I was working different. I was working like 3 different sales jobs. I was working because I can do design too. So I was working 2 sales jobs, a design job, and then I had my franchise in the energy business. So I was juggling a lot of different things. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that the time that I had spent in South Texas was probably coming to an end. So, you know, I looked at being a firefighter. I looked at doing different sales jobs. I looked at really where I wanted to go. So I looked at Austin. I looked at San Antonio because those are beautiful and very cool areas. And I also was feeling very pulled back to Southern California where I grew up. So as I was trying to make things happen and figure out where to go, I tested to be a firefighter. I made it through a couple of the rounds. That didn't end up working out. And then I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to move home to California. There's a lot of different job opportunities. And by this time, there were a ton of different job opportunities. I'd gotten more experience, and I felt really good about being able to leverage some of the contacts that I had here and find something that was going to work for me. So when I moved back to Southern California, I hooked up with a couple of friends, and they said, hey, I think we know a good place for you. So I ended up getting a job it was a sales job at a computer learning center, which sounds really weird, but it was really cool because I worked with a lot of IT directors, and I talked to decision makers, HR, and I really honed in on my ability to make a lot of cold calls, you know, network with people very quickly, present myself in a meeting, do presentations, and really sell. And I was doing that for a couple of years, probably like 2 years. And my boss actually went to another company, and then he hired me at that other company, which it was right in line. It wasn't a direct competitor, but it was a really good on-ramp to a career in technology and sales in technology. For people who don't know, technology is booming, and people should know that, but there's a lot of really cool things that are out there, and a ton of really cool sales rep positions. And the technology field was really interesting to me because it was hyper growth. Everything was changing, you know, everything was super duper dynamic, which is all the things that I enjoy. So I was always learning, and I was using a lot of the skills that I had learned at my other job, as well as in on my team, right? So that athlete side of me, and that drive and that ambition, that really gave me a foundation for succeeding at sales. And a couple years into doing the sales job, I had a friend reach out to me and say, "Hey, Deanna, we have this new volleyball club and we'd love for you to come coach." And I had been kind of out of volleyball for probably 3 years because I was still doing stuff here and there with volleyball. And I'd been out for 3 years because I was, climbing the corporate ladder. And eventually I was like, okay. He's like, "Come on, Deanna, just come to one practice." I said, okay. He's one of my best friends. So I was like, fine, I'll come to your practice. Okay, fine. Daniel, I'll come to your practice. So I reluctantly went, and I completely fell in love. It was 20 minutes of being there, and I was like, this is amazing.
I'm back at it.
I'm back at it. So I was an assistant coach. I was able to work with a ton of different teams. So I was a utility coach, which is the best kind of coach because I got to float around and work with a lot of different athletes and different teams. And what I noticed while I was there is that everything that I had been learning and been passionate about. So when I finished playing volleyball, I was doing triathlons, half marathons. I was rock climbing. I was rollerblading and skateboarding at skate parks. I was going to trampoline parks. And then when I moved home, I was boogie boarding again. So I was doing a lot of different sports. So that side of me has never changed. I've always doubled down on my health. I've always wanted to move my body. I've always been interested in and doing yoga and really maximizing my mental and physical performance. So that stuff was just stuff that I was selfishly learning how to do. So as I walked into this volleyball gym and I started working with these athletes, I started noticing that I was exactly like them once. And our practices became more than just skills and drills. It became a lot about goal setting. It became about the winning habits that it was going to take to get them where they wanted to go. It was about how to communicate with your teammates. It was about the nutrition and the hydration and just all of these different pieces that kind of came together. And as I was helping these girls achieve their goals and dreams, I realized mine. And I remember I was driving to work. I'd be driving to work and I'm like, how do I impact more athletes? How do I make something amazing? How do I do this? I know that I'm called for something huge, but I don't know what it is. I had no idea what that would look like. So for the first year, as I was coaching, I was getting to know what they would need or how they would need to consume things. And I did a ton of research. I was doing research on how to build a website, how to, have all the business stuff, like how do people consume things, how to create content, like all of these different things. Cause I was trying to figure out or find a model for what I wanted to do so I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. I do like to work smarter. So I was trying not to reinvent this wheel. So the first year was about vision and research and how do I do what I think I want to do? How do I create a thing? And the second year, because I was working full time. So this was kind of just something that was playing in the back of my head and something that I really wanted to do. So the second year was all about creating this roadmap of like things that I would need to learn and what I would need to do and how I would need to do it and just everything that I would need. And I was knocking stuff off the list. By the third year, my vision started to become a little bit more clear where it was like, okay, I know I'm going to have a YouTube channel. I know that I should have a YouTube channel for content. I'd like to write a book. I would eventually like to do speaking. That was like the plan, right? And at that time I was under, and I still have it, but I was under the Instagram handle Female Athlete Inspiration. But I didn't want a company that was called Female Athlete Inspiration because I wanted to speak to more than just female athletes. So at that time, the vision of how things would grow and present themselves wasn't really there. I mean, not for a lack of trying, but it took a couple of years. It took till year 3, probably like year 4 and year 5, where the vision for what I've wanted to create, the company, the book, and then everything else. And we can dive into that stuff in a second. But it took a while to really get the vision down in terms of how to make the biggest impact, how to serve this particular market, and how to create something that's unlike anything that's ever been created. So it's been a mission to get to this point from being being an athlete, transitioning to being, a salesperson, to getting fired. And I knew that it was coming. It wasn't, when your boss gets fired in sales, that you're going to get fired. Plus I knew it was the foot in the butt that I was going to need to create my own company. So that was also part of it. And transitioning to being a founder, being a CEO, running a business, being a speaker, being an entrepreneur, and not just a cookie cutter entrepreneur, but somebody who's creating something that
innovative.
Yeah. Yes.
So when it comes to this, right? So it was a journey to really kind of figure out what your purpose was, or what you felt, what you were called to do, right?
Yes.
So I know for me, I was an athlete that had this big dream, and I didn't know what I didn't know. So when you see these youth athletes for the first time, how were they going about the journey? Were they more of just like, I'm going to play, I'm going to achieve these goals, and they're just kind of just like, I'm just playing just to play? Or how do you kind of realize that this is something that's needed?
Oh man. So it was in this, like the first thing that I would ask them. So I'd come into the gym and I'd be like, what are you guys working on today? Because again, I floated with different teams. So I would work with all these different groups. So I'd be like, hey guys, what are you working on today? And they would look at me like I was crazy, which I am, but they would look at me like, huh? What did you just ask? And I said, what are you working on? And I was like, and then I was like leading them with questions and answers. I was like, well, you're a passer, right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so are you working on passing today? She's like, yeah. And I said, okay, well, what aspect of passing are you working on? And she's like, again, blank stare. And I said, are we working on moving our feet to the ball? Are we working on reading defense? Are we working on, all of these different, like giving her like 1,000 different answers that she could have answered. And, then she'd be like, moving. Yeah. Like, it was like, she was waiting for me to say the right one. She's like, moving my feet to the ball and reading off defense. Yeah. That's what I'm working on today. Mm-hmm. So I would, and this was not an uncommon conversation that I would have with these athletes. Just a simple question of like, what is your focus today? Some of these kids, they'd come in and they'd be playing for fun and they want to win, but just like the thought process behind how do we get better wasn't always, and again, this is just my experience in this particular thing. This isn't all athletes everywhere, but this really shined a light on how are athletes developing themselves. And also when I saw what was going on with these athletes, I started thinking, well, what was it like when I was 16? And I was like, well, you tried to eat well, or, you read through some magazines to try to learn how to eat well or better. And, you stopped eating fries and and soda. And then I started to think, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I was doing. And these kids didn't either. They had no idea that to be better at your sport, there are different things that can help to move the needle. And there's different aspects, there's different elements, there's different components to those. And I was really realizing that there wasn't a clear roadmap for athlete development. Like we know as athletes, right? And athletes at every level, even if you're a youth athlete, that you're supposed to, it doesn't mean you're doing it, but that you're supposed to be fast or do strength and conditioning. So I probably need to work out. I need to go to practice to develop my sport specific skills. I know that there's this thing about mental performance, but nobody, especially youth athletes, really can grasp that and comprehend it. And then, oh, well, I know that I'm supposed to recover and maybe sleep, or, it's just all these different things that we think that we're supposed to do. But especially at that age, you don't really know how to put that together. And this kind of goes through everything, is like, if you don't have a clear roadmap or a clear like step 1 through step 4, you're probably not going to do it, because then you have to take energy and attention, and you have to research, and you have to program your stuff. You have to look into things, and you have to learn. And guess what? That takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy. And not a lot of people have time or energy or prioritize that. So, creating a really easy to understand roadmap of, hey, if you want to perform at your best when it matters most, if you want to elevate your game, if you want to excel on and off the court, there are 8 things that you really need to focus on to increase your performance. Here's 8 things, 8 areas.
And just to go on that, I think it's one of those things where you look at the elite athletes, right? A lot of them develop that.
Uh-huh.
And they kind of like, you look at like the Tom Brady's, right? He was never the fastest or strongest, but he just had the mental aspects to push himself to do. And I think like what you're doing is awesome, because so many athletes never develop that, and they kind of just go off talent alone. And eventually talent just becomes, it doesn't get you everywhere, right? It may get you the junior year. Then you get hit and you're like, oh snap. Why is that person who was freshman year not that good? Now they're better than me.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that as athletes, we're juggling a lot. We're juggling our sport, we're juggling school, we're juggling our social and our family and all of these different pressures. And especially at that time, you're going to college, you've got people in your face about where you're going to go, what you're going to do. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. There's a lot of pressure. And the last thing you're really thinking, like, yes, we love our sport, but the last thing you're really thinking about is, how do I actually get to where I want to go? And what are the things I need to do every single day to do it? Like, that's not always the first thought. And why I've created the business and wrote the book that I have. And for the listeners, I've created a mental and physical performance platform that helps empower athletes to become unstoppable and unlock their true potential. And we do that in a variety of ways. So there's the book, there is a line of performance planners. We've got the podcast, so the content that's out. We're going to be developing a mobile application here soon that's going to revolutionize athlete development. The event series will be going on probably at the end of the year. And I know it's in January, so probably a year from now, because there's a lot to juggle, and just always looking at different ways to really revolutionize athlete development and help athletes get a little bit better and train smarter. So, the platform, the book, all of the things that we're creating, is really aimed at helping athletes understand and not even understand, but give them the strategies on how to succeed. Because it's very easy to know what we need to do and not as easy to do what we need to do. And a lot of us are developing in haphazard ways. Everybody wants to get better. Well, for the most part, everybody wants to get better at whatever they're doing. But we don't always do that in a linear way or in a way that really makes sense. And everybody learns in different ways. And I know that everybody's on their different journey. But when it comes to, I know that if I had this book, this program, if I had access to myself, or or any of the things that are out there today, or the podcast that I've learned from, I know that I would be a very different athlete. I'd probably be a professional athlete or be an Olympian. I know that because I know that I have the mindset and the work ethic to do that. And as I was developing as an athlete, I trained really hard, but I never really trained very smart. And that's something, we see in youth athletes, that there's a huge dropout rate in not in terms of high school, but drop out from sports. So participation ratio or numbers decrease. We have a lot of burnout and we have injuries. A lot of that can be attributed to, the volume of training that we're doing, training too hard instead of training smart. A lot of that can be attributed to not recovering and not sleeping and not teaching our athletes the strategies to really train smarter. So, and for everybody who's listening, the 8 areas that I focus on and my framework for peak performance is really blending the mental and physical performance aspects. And that's going to be hydration, nutrition, movement, and recovery. Those are all physical. And then on the mental side, we have confidence, energy management, visualization and self-talk, and resilience. So those are the areas that if an athlete wants to get better, if an athlete wants to see their performance soar on and off the court, if they want to be happier and healthier, these are the areas that we need to add strategies and winning habits in our life to really see change and move the needle in terms of performance, wherever that may be.
Love that. I think it, like you're saying, like if you can go back to like your younger self and be like, hey, do this, and I think that's kind of cool, just how you're going about helping the next generation. Like a lot of times people may think like, oh, why are you doing this, right? You may got a few of the points, but why are you doing this concept? With just like people kind of just learn it on their own, but where you can just see like just one little nugget because it's helped that the athlete learn to maybe fix your feet this time, work on that focus, and next thing that could be the one that makes them the captain, and I think it's awesome how you're going about this. So where do you hope to, I guess, continue to make this movement go, or how do you, or what are you getting feedback wise from your athletes that are going through this process?
Nice. So the big vision, which is very clear now, I talked a lot about in my journey, there's been not always a clarity of direction. I mean, it's been foggy, and I've been able to see, but I haven't always been able to like see the summit. Like I can clearly see that summit now, and I know what that looks like, and I know what I'm walking towards now. And for me and for the company, it's about revolutionizing athlete development. And that comes in a lot of different ways. The book is really cool because it helps athletes develop individually and give their best to their sport. And, one of the big pieces of this is that everything that you learn in your sport is directly transferable to everything you do in life. And these nuggets of wisdom, these experiences, these winning habits that you implement in your life as an athlete, guess what? Those shouldn't stop. Your goals, you just transition, you just shift. The feedback and kind of the big vision and what's been rolling forward so far is, so there's the book and the planner, and that is a program right now. It's a physical program that teams can use as their athlete development program. So when we walk into clubs, when we walk into high schools, unless the coach has a background in all 8 of these things, like they might be athletic trainers, they might be strength and conditioning coaches, they might have like pieces of these things, but there's really not. There is, and when I say this is the first thing, like this is a revolutionary thing. This is the first program that is a comprehensive athlete development program that gives athletes a customized roadmap for success for whatever they want to do. One of the things one of the pieces of feedback that I'm getting is people are really enjoying that there are a lot of different options. When it comes to nutrition, that's a sticky subject for a lot of people, because we have these, and especially in America, we have these ideologies that we love, right? So team paleo, team vegan, team meat eater, team what, fill in the blank,
Team Hot
team
Cheetos.
keto, whatever, right?
Team Hot Cheetos.
Team hot Cheetos and Frosted Flakes, or team I really don't care about what I put in my body. We have these ideologies, we have these teams, and the pieces of feedback that I'm getting are that I don't tell you what to do. In the book, in my program, in everything that my company develops, we don't tell you what to do. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. I'm gonna tell you, this is the current science. This is what we know. Your body and your mind are very, very unique. Here's 20 different things that you can try, and it's up to you to experiment. So the pieces of feedback that I'm getting is that people are really enjoying that they don't feel like they're being preached to. They're being given choice. And they're being taught how to find out for themselves. And that's really important as we mature as people and athletes, and everybody's, again, at a different place in their athlete journey, whether you're an ex-athlete or whether you are, a professional athlete now or just a youth athlete. We're all at different places. So knowing that you can experiment, you can find out what works for you, and here's a list of a bunch of different things you can try. I think that that's really empowering, to be told that you have control over your destiny. You have control over all of those things. And sometimes the reason why you fail isn't because you are bad. It's because the thing that you tried didn't work because of X, Y, and Z reason. And guess what? That one wasn't the right one for you. It doesn't mean that you should stop trying to be the best version of yourself, whether that's aesthetically, like losing body fat, if that's like your goal. That's just one of like the ones that people go to a lot. Or, in terms of like resilience, right? That's one we don't talk about a lot, is like, there's a lot of things that you can do.
Love it. So where people kind of maybe kind of find more about the Winning Element and what you're doing? Social media, websites? So
at The Winning Element is where you can find, on all social platforms is where you can get in contact with us. We have an assessment that is super powerful. And whether you're an individual athlete, whether you're a coach, and I have professional athletes who take this assessment, and it's hard to score well on. So for the youth athletes who take this assessment, especially when I go do workshops and speaking events, is, I say, hey, if you're not scoring very well, it just means you have a lot of room to grow. And it means you're going to see more growth faster because you weren't aware of these things. So the assessment is at www.thewinningelementassessment.com. And what it does is it breaks those 8 categories. There's 10 questions for each category. And what it does is it really helps you spot strengths and weaknesses in your physical and mental performance. And there's this powerful thing about numbers and visuals. When we get a score on something, it makes it real. Like when you see 5 out of 10, you're like, I got some work to do. When you see 2 out of 10, you got some work to do. And sometimes that's the foot in the butt that you need to really start looking at what would it take for me to add some new things into my life and really level up. So at The Winning Element on all platforms, I've got the podcast, The Winning Element Podcast, The Athlete's Journey, and I talk to a lot of professional athletes and coaches, and you're going to be on soon, and I'm really excited about it. So you can catch me at the podcast. And for teams or for universities or organizations that really want a program that is customizable and really freaking cool, they can just go to BeTheWinningElement.com, which is the website, and you can find out how to get in touch with me and our team there.
Yeah, it's so cool to kind of see your growth. Like, it's only been maybe about a year or so since we first connected, and just to see how you started when we first met, the female athlete mission, and now how it's female athlete inspiration, and how it's just progressing into this kind of cohesive No thing. So it's awesome.
It's a real thing. Like it's a real thing. I always knew I wanted to write this book, and like 5-6 years ago, I knew I wanted to write this book, and I knew you can't launch a book to no audience. Like that's stupid. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't ready to write it, right? And it took some time, and the vision's gotten more clear, and it's been really cool to have you on board with it too, because both of us have been growing our businesses, and we support each other in a lot of different ways, and it's really fun, and it's inspiring. Yeah. And it's fun to have somebody to walk with, and allies and people that just get it and get the journey. So I'm so grateful for you and everything that you're doing and the impact that you're making. I know that you love storytelling. You're an expert storyteller, and I know that you really love to get other people's stories out there. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit about mine. And I also look forward to sharing your story with my audience later.
Awesome, man. Hey, if you're listening right now, go watch some of her videos, the campaign, the Unstoppable campaign. Those videos are awesome,
Oh yeah, you're coming next. So you're on the next one. Yeah, the next couple of weeks I'll be getting that out. The Unstoppable campaign. Absolutely.
Awesome. Deanna, you the best. You the MVP. We're glad to have you on, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yo, thanks for listening to this episode of the 9 Point Started With a Dream podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, leave a review. We would love to hear your thoughts. You can find more athlete-driven content at 9point.com. Till the next episode, you're only one opportunity away. Peace.